I think sometimes it's important to do a little bit of reality check and take a little different spin at the numbers. I'm going to do that right here because all we talk about is how unpopular Donald Trump is. But in reality, he's basically more popular than he was at any point in term number one and more popular than he was when he won election back in November of 2024. What are we talking about? His net favorable rating right now comes in at -4 points. Compare that to where he was when he won in November of 2024 when he was at -7 points, or March of 2017 when he was at -10 points. So when you compare Trump against himself, he's actually closer to the apex than he is to the bottom of the trough. And of course, that's so important because Donald Trump, historically speaking, has had his numbers underestimated. So I think it's very important to compare him to himself to understand he's actually more popular now than he was when he won, or certainly where he was at this point back in his first term. The bottom line is Trump is more towards the ceiling than he is towards the floor.
So when you do that, it makes my knees.
Well, if you're a Democrat, there's about to be a lot more hurt than just your knees. Come on in, everyone. Great to see you all here. Wait until you see these stats. The contrast between Trump and the Democrats simply could not possibly be more stark as Trump continues to solidify his polling dominance, polling higher than he has ever polled before as we speak, even after November the 5th or the inauguration. The Democrats, they're completely melting down. Now, there's a lot of chatter surrounding a New York piece that just came out the other day by Ezra Klein. And in a nutshell, the piece basically admits, and keep in mind, Klein's a leftist, the piece basically admits that the Democrats are currently in their worst shape in 50 years. I mean, even during the Reagan era, they still had Congress. They still at least had some federal power. Now in the and they had the Supreme Court back then as well. Now in the Trump era, they've been completely exiled into political wilderness. The executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch. Obviously not these rogue judges, these federal lower court judges, but certainly on the Supreme Court. And Klein is sounding the alarm on this. He's basically like, look, guys, yo, Dems, the midterms are 19 months away. You got no leader. You got no bench. You got no message. You got no unity. You got no communication strategy. Your base is basically ready to launch a mutiny against you. Democrats right now are more intent on voting against Democrats than voting out Republicans. So you're going into the midterm season weaker than you've been in 50 years with no viable path to recover. And then he said something stunning. Again, remember, gang, this is coming from the New York Times, okay? Ezra Klein. If you, the Democrats, don't get back into power by either 2026 or at the very latest 2028, you're done. You're toast. Probably for the next several decades. And what Klein is alluding to there is the 2030 census that we're going to be talking a lot about in the months ahead. The Electoral College reapportionment that's giving red states lots and lots of new electors, and even worse, it's taking a number away from the blue states like California and New York because there's been such a massive migration to red states, this phenomenon we like to call refugees, right? Because there have been so many refugees fleeing blue states for red states, and then in most cases making these red states even redder. The 23 reapportionment of electors means this. Make sure you get this. This is very important because, again, this is what Ezra Klein raises in the New York Times. This is the alarm. Democrats in the presidential election after that 2030 reapportionment in 2032, Democrats could win every single state that Kamala Harris won back in 2024, plus all three blue wall states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and still lose. They would lose the Electoral College. That's how many electors, solid red states, are picking up. The 2030 census will shift the Electoral College sharply to the right for the foreseeable future. So much so that blue states will end up losing as many as a dozen House seats in the process. And, again, to make matters even worse, some of those blue states, including the bluest of the blue, are themselves turning right. Springtime is right around the corner, and if you're like me, are you finding that allergies are turning your nights into a nightmare? Well, meet Sambrosa Sweet Dreams Night Syrup. This, gang, is your ticket to a sleep paradise. This isn't just any syrup. It's a unique blend of pure natural honey, soothing organic herbs, and a touch of doxylamine, a trusted antihistamine that tackles those pesky nighttime symptoms. Whether it's sneezing, congestion, or itchy eyes keeping you up, Sambrosa's got you covered. Take it before bed and let its gentle formula help you drift off and stay asleep. This stuff is amazing. You wake up feeling refreshed, not groggy, and the best part, it starts at just $11.99. No prescriptions, no hassle, just natural relief. Visit the link below and use code Turley for 25% off and finally enjoy the sleep you deserve. Click on that link below right now. Now look at this. Again, this is going to show you how desperate things are getting for the Democrats. Look at this. Nearly 50% of Californians, 48%, are considering voting Republican in their next gubernatorial election. 50% in the bluest of blue states in the nation. Again, look at these stats. 83% of voters said gas prices are too high. Again, this is California. 72% feel homelessness still is a big problem after years of Democrat control in Sacramento. 71% believe the Democrats in charge have not addressed the state's high cost of living. 69% think Democrats in Sacramento have not done enough to bring down energy and utility costs. These are super majority numbers. I mean, we've been hearing Bill Maher whine and complain endlessly about the competency crisis and inefficiency epidemic that pervades California politics. And it looks like more and more voters are simply unwilling to continue to extend Democrats some more opportunities here. They're not waiting around anymore for the Democrats who maintain a one-party rule over California now for over a decade. They're not waiting around anymore for them to change. So the question now is whether the Republican Party in California has been so gutted that they simply don't have anybody viable enough to run. If the California GOP vets a serious contender, that person looks very likely that they're going to win the next. They're going to win the governor's race in California. And of course, if they can do that down ticket, then there's a very real possibility of California turning red just 19 months from now. When 1 out of 2 voters are willing to vote GOP in the state as a whole, that's a whole lot of pickups in their respective districts, particularly purple districts where Democrats are particularly vulnerable. And to make matters even worse, the Washington Examiner has a piece showing that the midterms are increasingly an uphill battle for the Democrats. Again, when all's said and done, the numbers just aren't there for the Democrats. There are really no viable seats for them to pick up. They've maxed out all the viable districts. And this when the Republicans are polling better and stronger than ever before. Now, 19 months is an eternity in politics for sure. No question about that. But the question really that's at the forefront of things here is what on earth is going to change for the Democrats over the course of those 19 months? I mean, I guess the economy could tank. I guess that could happen. I guess that Republicans can mess up brutal. I guess the people could turn on Trump, but outside of those external factors, even the New York Times piece is admitting there's really nothing going for the Democrats internally. Again, they got no bench, they got no issues. They're in this 80-20 doom loop we talk about constantly, where they're constantly planting their flags on issues that only have about 20% support of the most extreme. They side with bureaucrats as over and against taxpayers. They side with, illegal migrant, violent gang members as over and against their victims. They side with trans athletes as over and against women in female sports. I mean, on and on and on. We're just seeing them side with the 20% over and against the 80%. You're seeing it even in California stats, where 80% of Californians are against what Sacramento Democrats are proposing. That's what we were talking about earlier today in our video, the Axios report that came out the other day. But this is getting a lot of traction. This is getting a lot of, even more so from this morning when we were talking about it. It's really causing more and more establishment Democrats to hit the panic button. If you haven't seen this video yet, so this is an Axios report on a survey that the Democrats themselves commissioned. It's by Blue Rose Research. They're basically a left-wing pollster outlet research group, and they're trying to do some post-mortem here. And what they found was just frankly dire in terms of the current state of the Democrat Party. I mean, there's no candy coating this. Again, even the New York Times is admitting this. The Democrats are suffering currently from their lowest favorability rating ever since they've ever. The pollsters have not seen Democrats poll this low before. And it just depends. Quinnipiac had them down to 20. I think the latest CNN has them around 29 or so. Regardless, they're in the 20s, right? The 80-20 loop, right? Doom loop. They're in the deepest hole they've been in 50 years politically, just being out of power, which is exactly, again, what the New York Times is saying. The Axios report is underscoring how the Democrats have no national leader. They have no one to help galvanize and lead the party. By the way, that is one of the key signs that a social movement is dying, is that the leadership dries up. You start losing membership. You start losing issues. You start losing leadership. Those are signs of a decaying social movement. They're completely locked out of congressional power. They have no chance, by the way, of taking back the Senate at this point. Again, anything could happen, but at this point, no chance of taking back the Senate in 2026. If anything, they're likely to lose 2 more seats. Georgia and New Hampshire, 2 very popular Republican governors are running for those seats. So the GOP is looking like, at this point, they keep their 53. They're going to be at about 55 seats in 2026. And congressional Republicans are now targeting 26 vulnerable Democrat seats for the midterms. So they're going on the offense. I mean, rightly so, right? They see the Democrats as historically weak. All they have to do is read the New York Times to find that out. And so these congressional Republicans are positioning themselves to try to make history, to actually pick up seats in both the House and the Senate during the midterms, which would be astounding. That would be incredibly historical for sure. But again, we're already seeing it in the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race that we've been keeping an eye on. The electorate thus far in Wisconsin, with the early voting, both the mail-in voting and the in-person early voting, the electorate in Wisconsin has shifted 8 points to the right, 8 points since their last Supreme Court race back in 2023. Now, that's good news for sure, but it's not great news, right? Because in terms of the update on that, the last Republican to run back in 2023, lost so badly that 8-point shift isn't enough when it comes to this Wisconsin Supreme Court race. We need another 3 or 4 point shift to close the margin by which the Republican lost last time. A Democrat won with an 11-point margin. So an 8-point shift is great, no question. But if you know people in Wisconsin, give them a call, get in contact with them, and make sure they get out there and vote for the Republican in that state Supreme Court race. And let's see if we can, over the course of the next few days, get that early voting up, tick it up to about 3 or 4 more points. And then that's going to put us in an amazing position for a week from today, next Tuesday, April 1st. But regardless, if that 8-point shift in Wisconsin to the right represents comparable shifts, electoral shifts in Michigan and Pennsylvania among the electorate, Democrats are toast. They're toast in blue wall states, which means that they'll be locked out of federal power for the foreseeable future. Now, again, we have the caveat is anything can happen. We live in tumultuous times, as we always say. But as things stand, even some of the most prominent voices inside the Democrat Party establishment are openly smacking the panic button. And when they look at the changes in the Electoral College looming in the horizon, they're increasingly realizing that things are going from bad to worse. You may or may not know that I left academia a few years back for broadcasting, but teaching the next generation has and always will be on my heart. I've been broadcasting now through 3 election cycles, and I'm just sick at what the elites have done to our education system. So I decided to step up. My team and I have been working on this for well over a year now. I started a school, and I have absolutely massive plans to take it nationwide. The Worldview Institute of Entrepreneurship and Apprenticeship opens its first location in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on April 9th, and I want to invite you to the ribbon cutting. And I built a whole amazing event around it, so I want you to come and join me at the Kingdom Builders Experience, April 9th through 11th. You'll get an exclusive invite to the school's ribbon cutting. You'll be invited to a special Scotch and Cigars meetup with yours truly. I'll be lecturing at the school, plus we're hosting a Business Makers Summit where education meets opportunity. Now, seats are limited. Click the link below to learn more, and I can't wait to see you there.